You're listening to the Meet the Farmers podcast with me, your host, Ben Eagle. Please remember to subscribe to the show wherever you are listening. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 302 of Meet the Farmers. I'm your host, Ben Eagle. Today, we're in the US of A, and I'm joined by Tyler Froberg, who is a fourth-generation farmer from Alvin, Texas, who's using social media and direct sales marketing to take his family's legacy, which there is a lot of. We'll cover that today, but taking that into the future. Froberg Farms started with 22 acres of strawberries in 1936, although it has actually some history beyond that as well. And it's grown into the largest U-pick strawberry farm, formerly the largest strawberry farm as well. But that's another story, in Texas, alongside growing a variety of other fruits, vegetables, and Christmas trees as well. He started his career in the Army, joining after high school and being based in Washington State. After this, Tyler moved back to Texas, beginning work for Pearland's Parks and Natural Resources Department before joining his family's firm. He also has a bachelor's degree in ag from Texas Tech University. During COVID, he and Noah Young started the very popular podcast, Farming for Dummies, and engaging people with the topic of agriculture is something that he's really passionate about in all sorts of ways, which of course is really clear through his social media stuff that he does. Indeed, I'm going to say that he's actually become a social media sensation, sharing all sorts of educational farm stories and how-to videos to hundreds of thousands of followers on Instagram and TikTok. Tyler Froberg, welcome to Meet the Farmers.
Wow, what an introduction. That was awesome, man. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me. It's good to be heard across the pond.
Yeah, it's great to have you on. There's plenty to talk about. Just to start us off, can you tell us a little bit about farming in your part of Texas, first of all, in terms of the landscape, the ag? What does it look like? What's going on?
Yeah, so I'm sure most people, when they go to my social media, they're surprised that I'm not in a 10-gallon straw hat on horseback somewhere out in the middle of the desert with cow skulls and cacti and all that, because I am in Texas. However, I'm on the Gulf Coast of Texas. So we always like to joke that have the longest growing season out of anywhere in the world of 365 days. And we're also in the worst place to grow 365 days a year because it's miserably hot. We get hurricanes and we get about 60 inches of rain a year. There's lots of challenges of growing here, but also lots of rewards. We rarely freeze. When we freeze or get snow, it's a very rare thing. It's only happened a couple times in my life. So it makes diversified ag very, very popular and very successful in most cases, just because we can do a lot of different things from the fruit and vegetable side. We can do a lot of different things from the livestock and protein production side. And with our proximity so close to Houston, Texas, being our main hub, we are able to capitalize on direct-to-consumer marketing, and that being 100% of our business now. And so I would say that we are not unique in the direct-to-consumer business because there's lots of farms like ours across the world. But for our area, we are very unique. We are in an area that was once the rice capital of Texas. And then, of course, Texas being the beef capital of the world. So we don't raise rice or beef. And so for our area, we are very outside of the norm.
Just give us an idea of what's involved when you're on hurricane alert. What do you
Oh,
have to do from the farm? Because that's, of course, not an issue that any of our farmers on this side of this part of the world
yeah.
have to deal with.
And so I think understanding our history, and we'll go into the whole farm's history later on in the podcast, but understanding our family's history with hurricanes is important when we talk about anything. We are a family that has learned through time, right? 128 years of farming on the Texas Gulf Coast. So I had a great great aunt that came over with my great great grandfather, and she went through the 1900 storm of Galveston, which is a legendary storm in Texas. People still talk about 120 years later. And their shack got blown down, and she was only 16 years old and was blown into the middle of just a prairie and spent the entire night, just her and her puppy, in the middle of this hurricane, right? 40 inches of rain being dumped on her in one night, wind blowing, the rest of the family scattered. And the story goes that the next day she got on a boat and went back to Germany. So we have like a long history with hurricanes. Today, hurricane prep does look different because we have things like generators, and all of our buildings are built to specs that can withstand 200-mile-an-hour wind. So, a hurricane prep, a hurricane is different from a tornado, or even like I'm sure everyone listening right now, maybe y'all aren't. I don't know if it's made the news over there, but the catastrophic flood in the Texas Hill Country that has taken
Absolutely.
over 100 lives at this point. They had no warning for that. Hurricanes are a little bit different in that we start tracking a hurricane the minute it forms through satellite technology, and we can track that as it comes up through the Gulf of America and track it all the way to the coastline. And so, 10 days out, we know that it's formed. 7 days out, we know that there's a possible track to us, and we can start making sure that preventative maintenance is done on generators, that we have plenty of supplies to make it a week or even a month without electricity. Um, and then 3 days out, we pretty much know for sure whether or not it's going to hit us and how bad it's going to hit us. And so we can either evacuate our families, and we'll kind of hunker down to make sure all of our livestock and crops are good. We start all of our livestock we raise on pasture and movement, right? And so they're constantly in motion. So everything is mobile. Not great in a situation with hurricanes. And so we anchor all of those movable structures down, board up windows, pick everything. So that's kind of the rule of a big storm like that, because
Okay.
all your leaves are going to be stripped off plants. All the fruit is going to be either be blown away or floated away. And so we will go in and pick everything that we can, store it inside.
Mhm.
And then again, make sure generators are running so coolers and freezers don't turn off. And that's what it looks like. I mean, once the water starts, there's no way to stop it. Once the wind starts blowing, there's no way to stop it. So we just have to be best prepared for it.
Yeah. And then just clear up as best you can the other side.
Yeah, the good thing about a hurricane is that when it's over, it's over. Again, going back to these Texas Hill Country floods, they're still getting rain. The river is constantly fluctuating, still flooding some areas. They call it a wall of water still moving down the Guadalupe River, which is the main river affected by that flood. With a hurricane, that's not the case. With a hurricane, it blows in, and normally within 12 hours, it's done. And it either dissipates, or when it hits the coast, they'll normally be pushed away from land and follow back in track with like the East Coast towards North Carolina. It might hit Louisiana and Mississippi and go up to North Carolina. But nonetheless, in our area, it hits and then it's over. And, repairs, cleanup, all of that starts the next morning immediately. We
Hmm.
take the boards off the doors and the windows, and start clearing roads, and helping the power line companies out with removing trees, and checking on your neighbor and checking on your livestock and your crops, and you move on with it.
Yeah. Just something you live with, I suppose. Amazing.
Yeah.
And let's talk about the business generally. And I'm interested in definitely some history of it and how it evolved. But tell us first about the business today and how it works.
Yeah, so the business today does look very different than it did 128 years ago. The business today, as it sits in 2025 in Alvin, Texas, is we are a direct to consumer diversified fruit, vegetable, and protein farm where we hyper focus on utilizing agritourism to drive those direct to consumer sales. And so, what does that mean? Because that was a lot of words.
Hmm.
And so, that means that we raise almost everything that we can possibly raise here in terms of diversification. So, strawberries, watermelon, grapes, greens like mustard greens, turnip greens, collard greens, okra, eggplant, peppers. tomatoes, cowpeas like purple hull peas and cream peas, and we do all of these things. We raise broilers, which are meat chickens. We raise land hens. We raise pork. We do all of these things, and then we have a 10,000 square foot grocery store on our farm, and we are able to sell these directly to the consumer. 100% of what we raise, we farm about 250 acres, and we sell that directly to our consumer. But we use agritourism, i.e., festivals, educational opportunities, and we use that to drive these sales. So, as we're recording this right now, we're in the summer here in Texas, so school is out. And so, twice a week, we have a free educational program for kids on the farm. And what that does is it brings people to our farm. Parents are here and they're going to shop. We have a full commercial cannery and bakery at our farm. So,
Okay.
mom can buy cookies for the kids. She can also pick up a gallon of milk and some chicken that was raised right here on our farm and a fresh watermelon for the afternoon when they go to the pool. And, that's the goal. In the fall, we do a fall festival, which is a corn maze and a pumpkin patch and all these fun things. And then we raise Christmas trees where they can come out and cut down their own Christmas tree, and we make it as a Christmas festival. So we have a
Yep.
Christmas market and hay rides to look at Christmas lights, and then we do you pick strawberries, and that's a big strawberry festival. We do a watermelon festival where the Texas watermelon queen comes out, and we have 25 food trucks out and stopping vendors, and so we utilize that agritourism to drive the direct to consumer sales.
But I mean, that doesn't happen overnight. So how has
No, it
that
doesn't.
evolved over time? And have you been the
Yeah.
driving force behind that?
So we got to take it back to the beginning.
Yeah.
1894, my great great grandfather, E.H. Froberg, comes over from Germany and he knows how to do one thing and only one thing, and that's farm strawberries. And so he starts doing that. And then there's a little fruit called the fig that was gaining in popularity, mainly because of fig preserves. And so when they landed in Galveston, they came to Alvin, Texas, because they had heard there was a cannery in Alvin because of the railroad. There was a railroad depot that came through Alvin, Texas, and connected to that was an ice house and a cannery. And all the farmers in the area would raise strawberries and figs, and they would bring them to this cannery, and they would make personal sized strawberry preserves and fig preserves for passengers on trains all across the country. So just like if you take an airplane ride today, you get a bag of pretzels or peanuts. Back in the day in the United States, if you took a train ride, you get a little bit of toast and some strawberry or fig preserves. And
Right.
most of those strawberry and fig preserves were made in Alvin, Texas. And so my great great grandfather played into that and had heard about this and said, I can make a living there. And so and then when my great grandfather became 18, he was here with them. He also went into business with them, and they were farming figs and strawberries. And then when the Great Depression and then the recession started, and so in the 30s they lost everything,
Yep.
and they sold the current farm they were on, and they bought a smaller place, which is the farm we're on now. And that would happen in 1936. And so a lot of times people look at our logo and see the established as 1936. And that's because that's when we bought this current farm. And so if things couldn't get any worse, this little thing called World War II happened, which y'all are familiar with. Um, and so in the 40s, my great grandfather, he had this brand new farm, only a couple years old. They were picking strawberries. They were shipping them all over the country fresh because of the ice house. They were also putting them into preserves. And then all of his labor got drafted to go fight in the war. And so, not knowing what he was going to do, he took an ad out in the Houston Chronicle, which was a newspaper at the time, that said, "We don't know what y'all are going to do. If you're living in the city, bring your families down, bring your kids, and come pick your own strawberries and see what it's like. Experience country life for the day." The rest was history. That was in 1942, and the story goes that that evening he walked inside and he told my great grandmother, "We'll never pick another strawberry. They'll pick it."
Sorry, in terms of like you pick your own here in the UK is what it's called. Was that? I
Yep.
mean, I'm guessing that was pretty innovative at the time.
People said you're crazy. It wasn't a novelty, or that was not his intention for it to be a novelty. His intention was, we got to get these strawberries picked, or we're going to go
Yeah.
bust it again. And so he did it again in 1943, did it again in 1944, and the story goes on and on. And so strawberries have been picked by families here at Froberg's farm in Alvin, Texas since 1942. The business changed multiple times over the years. The one thing that stayed the same was people could come here every year and pick strawberries. That never changed. It never wavered. But a bunch of other things did change. And so my great grandfather, he raised a few watermelons and a few figs, but his main thing was strawberries. He loved to take the summers off. We don't raise strawberries in the summer here. We raise them over the winter because of how hot it is and how cool it is in the summer or in the winter. So think of our winters are more like everyone else's springtime, right? It's
Okay.
60 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit during our winter time. And so that's our main strawberry time. And so he would take the summers off and enjoy time. But my grandfather loved people, and he served in the Korean War. When the Korean War was over, he came back to the family farm. He became a professional wrestler at night, like entertainment style. This was very popular in Texas and the United States during the 1950s. In fact, it was the first Houston wrestling was the first televised event in Houston, Texas. And my
Wow.
grandfather was part of it. That was what he did at night. And then during the day, he was a farmer, but he loved people. And so he doubled down him loving to interact with people. And so he created a farm stand, right? Kind of the make of a first, like this idea of a family owned grocery store on a farm. He kind of built the first one on our farm, and he loved bringing people out. Families coming out. He would sit and talk to customers for hours, right? And of course, while he's doing that, he's convincing them to buy tomatoes and watermelon and
Yeah,
all
of
these things.
course.
But he was an entertainer, and so and he didn't believe really in wholesaling anything. He wanted everything to be sold on the farm. So he grew 40 different things and he sold it all right here. And then when he passed, my uncle took over. And my uncle, you know, we like to say he's a farmer. Like it was in his
Right.
blood. That was what he wanted to do, is all he ever wanted to do. And he was going to be the best at it. And so while still doing UPIC and still doing direct to consumer, in fact, he built the first like actual grocery store on the farm with walls on it. He
Okay.
wanted to scale up. So he very quickly became the largest strawberry farmer in Texas, raising over 40 acres of strawberries. He was wholesaling to our grocery stores, wholesaling to restaurants while still doing UPIC. And he did it big, right? But over time, there became problems with that type of model for small farms, right? And in some cases, it felt like for small farms, the bigger you got, the obviously your margins got worse, which is not great. And so around COVID, he had the opportunity, right? COVID did something crazy for all of farms like ours, and we all got really busy. And so during COVID, we said, let's not wholesale anymore. Let's just be direct to consumer. Let's take those 40 acres of strawberries and scale it back to just what we need for UPIC, recapture our margins, and let's diversify again. Let's start raising all the tomatoes and the peppers and the eggplant and the greens and the grapes and the figs and the Christmas trees and the animals and all of these things. And let's truly become a family owned grocery store where we can supply as many things possible for your plate. We call it, like, when you walk into our front door, we want you to be able to eat completely around your plate from the farm. That's the goal. And so
Okay.
that's where we are today. We've built these festivals into place to drive traffic to the farm. We're raising the protein. We're raising all the different fruits and vegetables, and we have the cannery and the bakery on the farm so that there's no waste whatsoever. And in doing so, we're able to become community partners. So we partner with lots of different programs throughout our community, which is so important. As it sits today, we have about 300,000 people that come to the farm a year, which sounds great, unless you're a small town with a local municipality that has to provide police force for that, has to provide roads for that, has to
Of course.
provide gas stations and restaurants, and it can become frustrating. And so becoming a community partner when you're the driving force behind all those people coming is very important. We have to make people realize that no, your restaurant's staying in business because we're bringing all these people. All of these people are a good thing, right?
Mm.
These people are all stopping and getting gas while they're in town. They're driving from all over the state, in some cases, all over the country to come here. So we should tailor to that, and the community should be on board. And so we've developed these strategic community partners to make sure that all of it goes smooth.
I love the story, particularly when you take that long view of how businesses adapt over time, but also stay true to their roots. And I think this is a really key example of that. But also, what you were saying at the end there is the impact of this doesn't stop at the farm gate. It's that much, much broader, bigger picture. And you can't really, yes, clearly COVID had an impact. And as we'll go on to say as well, some of your other work as well has clearly had an impact
Yeah.
on that as well. But yeah, I just find that amazing how that business just has developed over time through through ideas, and also through personalities, through the ways you described your grandfather, your uncle, what they wanted, has then had an impact on the business itself.
Big time. Yep. In fact, my wife does field trips for all the local schools on the farm. And that's how she tells the story. She tells the story, a much condensed version of what I told you, but she tells the story using what each person brought through the
Yeah.
years back to the farm. And that's a really cool way to look at it.
And you yourself, you actually started your career in the army. I now know that you actually have family history in the army as well, but in the
Yeah.
military.
Come from a lineage of veterans. And so not just my grandfather, but some of his siblings and then uncles, and my brother is still in the service here in the United States. And so it seemed like a very natural choice for several reasons for me. In the United States, we have this thing called the GI Bill, which if you go and serve in the military for 4 years, you get your college paid for. And so I
Ah,
knew,
okay.
yeah, I knew that I wanted to go to college, but as our family stood at that point in time, like there was no way we could pay for it. And so the military seemed like a really good option. I also had never seen anything past Texas. And so I thought it would be a really good opportunity to kind of see parts of the world, pay for my college, and serve our country, which in the United States, patriotism is still alive. And
Oh yes.
right, it's a very big honor to be able to serve our country. That all played a role in that decision of, you know what, I think joining the military is a good decision for me. Right. We hear in the United States, we hear all these different reasons why everyone has their own motivations. But for me, that was it. And so I had a great military career, loved it. But ultimately, it also showed me that Alvin, Texas is a really, really great place to not just live and grow up, but to raise a family and run a business. And so when my 4 years was up, I came back home to Texas, worked on the family farm, but said, you know what? I joined the military for a reason. I want to go to college. But on the family farm, we work 7 days a week, normally 10 to 12 hours a day. So going to
Yes.
college and doing that at the same time was not going to be an option. And so I decided to go ahead and leave the family farm and kind of go on my own little adventure. And while I did school, we have some really great online programs here. And so I went to our local community college and went to Texas Tech online and got to do a lot of cool things while I did that. I served with the Pearland Parks and Natural Resources Department as their forester, working with tree mitigation and tree preservation. And then once I graduated, I actually didn't go directly back into farming. I actually got to exercise my passion for education, and I taught agriculture science at our high school here in our town.
Okay.
And so we have a program in the United States called FFA, the Future Farmers of America. And so, yeah, it's in every public school in Texas has the program, and then every other state also has the program, but it's not required. But in Texas, it is required that every public school have the program. And
Oh my
so,
goodness. Sorry,
yeah,
I can just feel listeners in the UK at the moment, farmer listeners in the UK saying, "We want this." That
yeah,
sounds
yeah. It's been around since 1928. Not to go on a tangent, but they're one of the biggest sponsors that I work with too. And it's a fantastic program. Not only does it require every public high school in the state of Texas to have a minimum of one agriculture education class. And we're not talking about sprouting a lima bean in a Ziploc baggie, right? We're talking about agriculture education, our food system, the science of
yeah.
growing, leadership in agriculture, all the things. But most high schools take it way past that. And they have all sorts of classes from meat science to livestock production to agronomy to floriculture and floral design. And then you have the club that's a part of that, the FFA, where there's competitions to exercise all of these skills, speaking competitions, youth leadership development. The list goes on, right? But they're a great program. And I was really excited to be a part of that. And I taught for a year. And in that year, I loved it. But with that, um, that community is very tight knit and word gets around. And so as my success grew in that short time, I was recruited to go and run a non for profit farm that had recently started a veteran training program to train veterans to be farmers. So it was a very natural fit. They were looking for someone who had been in agriculture education, who was a veteran, and most importantly, knew how to farm. And so it seemed like a very natural fit, right? And so I went and did that for 3 years until the grant ran out. And that's actually when I started the social media. I gotten a taste of the education when I was a teacher. And while I was still educating, I like with my fellow veterans, it was very hard to, I guess you could say, be myself, be the authentic me, which is very silly and very happy go lucky. It doesn't typically fit the veteran mold in the United
Not
States,
exactly.
the devil dog, hoorah, you know. And so that's when I started social media. I saw other people having success with that. And I thought, I don't know anything about it. I didn't even have a personal page. But I thought, I bet I could do it. Like I feel like I could probably do it. And so I started and quickly, like School of Hard Knocks, learned, hey, like I think I got this figured out, right?
Okay.
Find something that works that people watch and then rinse and repeat until it doesn't work anymore. Find something new, rinse and repeat, so on and so forth. As long as you're being authentic and you're passionate about what you're talking about, people will normally watch or listen or what have you. And that was the case. And so once the grant ran out, I kind of had this social media presence. And so came back to the family farm and just kept going with it. And it was a more natural fit at that point because now I could tie in that family history and I had a little bit more grounding about me, a little bit more hands on knowledge. And so last September, Uncle retired and my wife and
Okay.
I officially took over the farm. And, utilizing social media, we're able to drive business to the farm and have an international audience watch um, it's not just educating on like how to grow something, but people are just we live a different lifestyle than most people, and I think people are just genuinely interested in that because it's different.
Yeah. I mean, do you plan your content much in terms
uh
of what you're going to do, or is it sort of what are we going to do next?
yeah, both. I actually have Jesus sitting here. Jesus is our cameraman and editor
Hi,
on the
Jesus.
farm. And so he is a big driving force behind the success of that.
Okay.
So yeah, there's a little bit of both. Jesus and I work together to plan some of the content, and then some of it, as in farming, is spur of the moment.
Yeah.
It just happens, right?
And I mean, just go back to as part of the story when you came back to the firm and you were managing that transition between you and your uncle. I mean, this is a
hmm
classic farming story in terms of new generation comes in, has other ideas, other experience.
Yep.
Um, but how did you manage that transition time?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's actually something that I get asked a lot by other farmers specifically
Yeah,
because the nephew uncle situation is not a stereotypical situation for people like us.
exactly.
Um, Oftentimes, nephews are like the pest. They're like, my nephew won't leave me alone. He thinks he wants to be a farmer, and like he's. And so The difference is that I didn't just come back to the family farm. I went and I built my own reputation. I got my own experience. When I got out of the army and came back to the family farm, in some ways I saw the writing on the wall and I didn't see the family farm as an option. Even though I was working here, like it just didn't seem my uncle wasn't anywhere close to retirement
Yep.
and he has his own kids. And so in my mind, I kind of convinced myself that the family farm was not an option. And that's the best piece of advice that I could ever give anyone
Mm,
because a lot of people in the same situation as myself get caught up in that I'm going to force it. And in most cases, because people's pride is a finicky thing, uh, it forces it not to happen, right? You
that's
become the pest. And so, for anyone listening who is in the same situation I was of you have this beautiful family farm, you have someone in the hierarchical position who's getting older, but doesn't see you as a fit, show them they're wrong. And you can't show them they're wrong by being on the family farm because you're just the knucklehead nephew or niece or cousin or whoever you are, right? You need to go out and you need to build your own reputation, right? You need people calling your family farm saying, hey, is that where that farmer Froberg guy is? Oh, no, he's not here. Why isn't he there? That doesn't make any sense. And so the best thing really that ever happened to me was me being convinced that the family farm wasn't an option because I was
okay.
able to spread my wings and go learn what I needed to know and experience things and make the mistakes and just become who I am, right? I needed to not be Alfred's nephew anymore. I needed to be Farmer Froberg. And I
Mm,
was able to do that by spreading my wings. And then comes the hard part where you do that, you become your own person, you become the person with the reputation, and then the phone call happens. The phone call of, hey, it's time to come back to the family farm. And, you got to do a lot of thinking because, yes, this is all you ever wanted, but you have to come back and you have to have the tough conversation of, hey, I'll come back, but I'm not coming back as an employee, right? I'm going to come back as a partner. I'm going to come back as a 50% owner, a 30% owner, whatever that conversation is. You need to know in your mind, what does that look like? And then the conversation of, look, I'll come back and I'll always make sure you're taken care of. When you decide to retire, we'll pay you retirement, but it all goes to me.
mm,
And that's the conversation people don't like to have. And it's the most important conversation for the success of a family farm, right? Family farms didn't fail because of economies in the most part. Family farms didn't fail because of the lack of ability to make money for the most part. For the most part, family farms failed because every 30 years the farms would get split five ways. And most of the time, four of the portions would be sold off because they don't live or work on the farm anymore.
yep.
And so after three generations, the one cousin who still has an interest in farming only has 3 acres to work with. And that's a hard life. And so, there's lots of conversations to have, but the most important one is look, I will come back and I will do this and I will see that you have a retirement and that you're taken care of. But this place isn't going to get split seven ways with all the cousins and nieces and that. I'm the one doing all of the work. And that sounds selfish. And that sounds, hard to hear for some people, especially when you're not the person working on the farm, right?
Yep.
But if the point is to preserve the family farm, then it's one person.
Mm.
That's just the way it is, right?
Yeah, I think there's so many learning points from
Yeah.
what you just said there in terms of the directness, definitely,
Yes.
and the determination, but also on the flip side as well. If you go out and you do your own thing and you put yourself in the driving seat, then you have the strength because you can also decide, do I want to go back or I've got this
Bingo.
whole other career route that I could go down this, but you go back in the
Yep.
terms of strength.
I got the opportunity a couple of years ago after I'd come back to the family farm, I guess about 2 years ago, to go speak at Texas Tech, my alma mater, and to speak to young agriculturalists who were coming up. And I asked a raise of hands how many people were in a similar situation to me. And there was a lot of hands raised in the room. And I said, look, some of you need to understand that the answer is going to be no. Like when that phone call happens and you say, look, I'll come back, but I want to be a 50% owner with the option to retire you and to retain 100% ownership. And if the answer is no, then guess what? Your response is fine. I'm not coming back.
Yep.
Like, and that's okay. You have to be okay with that because and that goes back to the reason you left, right? You have to leave in the first place knowing that you might not ever come back. And it's the best thing that'll happen to you because you can be free. You can spread your wings. You can learn what you need to know with nothing holding you back. And if, if you're supposed to go back and take over, you will. But if not, it's okay because there's lots of other opportunities out there.
Let's look ahead for a bit in terms of your goals, your vision for Froberg Farms for the next,
Yep.
let's say, 2, 5, 10 years.
We want to become a fine tooth or a well-oiled machine, right? We want to become a well-oiled machine. We want my wife and I have a 12-month calendar year that has the right dates for all the festivals because of trial and error, has the right time to do certain educational programs, has the right time to plant certain crops and harvest. And we want that 12-month calendar to be a well-oiled machine where 5 years from now, we could do it in our sleep,
Yeah.
right? And it works, and it's has moved in a direction where the farm is so efficient and so sustainable that our children or our niece or nephew
Yep.
wants to come into the business, they could, and they won't have had the struggles that all the generations had before us because every generation before us, including us, had its own struggles and had its own thing it had to work through or grow. And we do feel like because people aren't going to quit having families, right? And that's what we tailor to. That's our target audience is that family of four, mom, dad, two kids under 10.
Mhm.
That's our target audience. That target audience will always exist. And so we believe that the model that we're building will stand the test of time. Sure, it'll have to be adapted and it'll have to grow and it may even have to reinvent itself, but the base of the model and the timing of the model will always be the same. And so, in 5 years, we want to be doing what we're doing but it just be well oiled. It'd be perfectly sustainable and when I say sustainable, it's kind of a buzzword, right? When I say sustainable, it's sustainable from a financial standpoint, it's sustainable from an environmental standpoint, and it's sustainable from a timing standpoint, meaning that we can do it over and over again and it works, right? I think when we start talking about sustainability, people miss the financial sustainability part of it, right? Just because it's environmentally sustainable doesn't mean it's financially sustainable. And just because it's financially sustainable doesn't mean it's environmentally sustainable. And for something to truly be sustainable, it has to be all of it.
Um, going back to ag education, which obviously you have a big history in, but also blending that with your social media and what you've learned from that. I think you're actually quite uniquely placed in this sort of position. So, do you see a position where social media and ag education will come together more sort of formally in future in terms of encouraging new entrants, but also just simply getting the word out there?
So that's a really good question. And I think that while we hope the social media stuff continues to grow, as it sits right now, and as it has sit for the last 4 years that I've been doing it, I love doing it because there is no pressure, right? I haven't created these which there's nothing wrong with them. I respect people who do what I'm about to talk about because it's their only source of income or whatever. But like private channels or a subscription service or all that, I think all of that stuff is fantastic because everyone's time is worth money. But for me, like running the farm and having a family and doing all these things takes up so much time that right now and for the last 4 years, I've done social media because I've loved it and I want to just continue to do that. I think if I add a more formalized program or anything like that, it's going to create metaphorically and physically what I call deadlines. And essentially now I have a boss and I don't like that.
Yeah.
I'm not good at stuff like that, right? I don't plant by the calendar. I plant by when I know I'm supposed to plant, and that works really well for someone who doesn't like working for other people. And so, that type of stuff, I just don't think is for me. I really don't. I want to continue to grow our pages the way we have, just producing organic, fun, hopefully educational content, utilizing Jesus sitting here next to me to the best of his abilities, but doing it in a way that it's still very much fun to me. Because I think that's what bleeds through. I think if I was forced to sit down and create like a formal educational program, I would hate it. I just wouldn't like it. And that's just my personality and who I am. Like I am fueled by that passion and fueled by by the freedom of being able to make my own decisions. And so when I start formalizing things like that, for me personally, it just sucks the life out of me.
I think we're going to start to round it up, but mostly because I'm really interested in your responses to these last two questions, and I want to
Yep.
give you the time and space for them. We always finish each episode with this, and one is a message to the public, and one is a message to farmers, and you can come at it at whatever angle you want to. But yeah, so interested in first of all your message to the public.
Yep. So my message to the public is don't buy into fear mongering. In all parts of the world, there is misinterpretation of different things, whether it be ways that things are grown or certain labels and their actual meaning versus their fake meaning, and misinterpretation of all these different things. And ultimately, if you have a question about something that you might be worried about, you might be scared about, or you might be really excited about, I think the farmer is a really good place to start because every farmer that I've ever met that's been in business for, let's say, more than 5 years is well educated. And I don't mean just college, I'm talking about well educated in the sense that they have experience and they have knowledge from that experience. And so if you're concerned about something, if you are excited about something, if you have a question about something, the farmer is a really good place to start.
And talking of farmers, what would your message to farmers be?
Hang in there, ladies and gentlemen. Hang in there. It is a tough life. It's not for everyone. That's why we do it, right? That's why every farmer who's listening, that's why we do it. And so just hang in there. There's been ups and downs. There's been rises in markets and lows in markets. There's been change in growing patterns. There's been change in popularity of different things since organized agriculture started. And so always remember why you do it and who you do it for. And if you do that, then everything's going to be great.
It's interesting that hang in there message is by far and away being the most popular message this year, and also from wherever in the world people are as well. And I wonder whether
Sure.
that has something to do with where ag is at the moment.
Yeah, I think we in every state in the United States and then every country across the world and their own states, I think they all feel like they're probably dealing with some sort of unique problem. And while the problem itself might be unique, I think they all miss the point that every farmer and rancher and anyone involved in agriculture in the entire world is dealing with something. I think that is important to remember. And I feel like people have never been more connected than they are right now through social media and these other various avenues. And so I think people are just more aware that everyone is going through something. And so I like that. We should put hang in there on a t-shirt.
Maybe you should do that. Put it out to your
Yeah.
followers. Tyler, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Yeah, your energy is infectious, and it's a fascinating business that you have over there.
Thanks so much, sir. Appreciate the time.
My pleasure. That's it for today. We'll leave it there. A huge thank you to my guest, Tyler Froberg, for coming on the show. Thank you also for listening. Please hit that subscribe button if you don't already. If you enjoyed this episode, you will get the next one next week. Next time, we are talking about smart farming trends in the dairy sector. We'll be back here in the UK with a panel of guests. But for now, I'm Ben Eagle. This has been Meet the Farmers, and thank you very much for listening.